Welcome to Exploiting History, where movies are real, history's fake. My name is K.R. Richards, and join me as I seek how successful and truthful various cash grab films are based on or inspired by true life events from the vaults of forgotten classic, cult, and exploitation cinema. Here we go. In tribute to the 80th anniversary of the Allied Invasion of Normandy, I'm launching my show covering a mammoth piece of great Hollywood movie entertainment, The Longest Day, which to me is a forgotten classic with so many people due to being eclipsed by the violently graphic 1998 film Saving Private Ryan. The Longest Day is a 1962 World War II picture about the June 6, 1944 Allied invasion of Normandy, the largest amphibious invasion ever, as told from both the Allied and German points of view. It was one of the biggest budgeted films at the time, which was just as much as a risk for legendary producer Darryl F. Zanuck, who put it all on the line. Let's see how much fact there is to this big screen spectacle, the legacy of these real-life events, the results for the major players involved, and if the film ultimately succeeded for the producers. The Longest Day itself was to be filmed on many of the same locations in Normandy where the battles took place, while the beach landing scenes were to be filmed at Corsica. With the cast, crew, directors, and locations ready to go, it was now up to fate to see the outcome of the film as it was for the fate of the outcome of the invasion itself. They say truth is sometimes stranger than fiction. And this movie is certainly one of those that lives up to that statement. So instead, I'll point out the inaccuracies of this picture, which are far and in between. Filmed in pseudo documentary style, the movie commences on June 5, 1944, the day before the launching of the biggest invasion, where both the German and Allied authorities contemplate each other's next possible move. We're also introduced to some of our main casts, including World War II veterans and victims of that conflict. Kurt Jürgens, a political prisoner imprisoned in a Hungarian internment camp in 1944-45. Christian Blech, who fought on the Eastern Front. Eddie Albert, Pacific War hero. And Richard Burton, who served in the RAF. Adding to this accuracy, true life D-Day veterans were added to the mix. John Robinson, Richard Todd, and Donald Houston, seen here as an RAF pilot who also flew in the RAF on a Lancaster bomber. Talk about life imitating her. Burton did state, though, that he thought that Houston and himself were too old to be playing pilots in this film. Regardless, he wanted to do this blockbuster to kill some time, as he was shooting another certain blockbuster at 20th Century Fox called Cleopatra. No, not that one. Although that would have been quite cool. But this one. And why is it I always want to drink when I see this great Welshman? Oh, okay, that's why. We are introduced to the top-billed star being the iconic John Wayne, portraying Lieutenant Colonel Benjamin Brunderwood, seen here with the great Robert Ryan, playing Brigadier General James M. Gavin, who both previously starred together in the 1951 World War II picture The Flying Leathernecks. It's worth noting.
Can I use your board? Of course.
Based on his extensive war filmography. We also get our first inaccuracies of the movie, getting one of the least convincing depictions where John Wayne, clocking at 54 years old at that time, was considered too old to play a combat paratrooper, and 12 years older than the real-life hero Vandervoort was 27 years old during D-Day. As for Robert Ryan, clocking at 52 years old, was 15 years older than the real Gavin was, who was 37 years old in 1944. But remember, movies are real, history is fake. Gavin was more accurately portrayed by the late Ryan O'Neal, who was in the right age range in the 1977 movie The Bridge Too Far. Despite that, the audiences thought that he was not old enough.
God damn it.
You can't win. Robert Mitchum, though, was perfect casting playing Norman Dutch Coda, who's in fact actually younger than the major advisor in Operation Overlord. But hey, he still pulls it off. These following segments accurately capture the mentality of the German High Command on the eve of the invasion, who were convinced that Normandy was not the main target for the Allied invasion, but Pas-de-Calais, which was the town at the narrowest point of the English Channel, separating France and England. Also, the High Command especially believed the Allies were not going to attack during one of the worst Channel storms in years. In England, the Allied Command were also torn by the same issue as their German counterparts, that being on the issue of the stormy weather. Now, it cancelled. The next opportunity to hit the beaches would be in mid-June. One small inaccuracy throughout these scenes with the American troops are their uniforms, where they're seen here wearing the post-war version of the M1943 jackets. Finally, in a dramatic decision, Dwight D. Eisenhower, the Supreme Commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force in Europe, contemplates if the Allied flotilla were to go ahead with the invasion due to the bad weather. Now, I love this scene of the importance of time being stressed by the enhancing of the ticking clock.
Gentlemen, I don't see how we can possibly do anything else but go.
In a subtle stroke, he had greenlit Operation Overlord. The invasion of Normandy was now on.
Invasion! We're on our way.
One could only imagine the intense stress of burden weighing in on Eisenhower to make this decision. The actor playing the part, named Henry Grace, was in fact not even an actor, but a Hollywood set director when cast to play the Supreme Commander due to his remarkable resemblance to him. There was even a consideration of having Eisenhower play himself for this scene, but was considered too old to play such a high-profile part. How is that for light imitating art? Ultimately, Eisenhower himself walked out on the film's release based on his frustrations of the inaccuracies he saw in the movie. But you should remember this. Films are real, history's fake. One major scene worth focusing on is the introduction of the American 82nd Airborne Regiment, getting a brief on the new metal clickers device, which was a great plot device and one of the many pivotal points of the film.
One click is to be answered by 2 clicks.
Here, I got myself a reproduction of this from the museum in Normandy, and it says the following. This is a reproduction of the crickets which was used by the Americans on the night of 5th to 6th June 1944 in the American Airborne Landing Zone. The click-clack of the cricket helped the soldiers of the 101st Airborne Division to communicate with each other without alerting the German troops. So, in fact, it was the 101st Green Eagles. They had the clickers and not the 82nd. But as they say, films are real and history is fake. With the second act kicking in, I have to first stop and say this. As you may have 1 to 2 big set action pieces and in an action war film, here in this movie, you have multiple scenes that are fantastic to see, which makes it hard for me to choose one. I'll do my best to filter some of the highlights. Up to speed, moving on. With the invasion now confirmed, the BBC radio sent out coded messages to the French resistance fighters, who sprung into action, destroying and enabling key targets of the German communication. The French forces of the interior, a resistance movement, who aided the Allies behind enemy lines, were about to achieve the coup de grace in helping with the invasion. Reprisals for their action, though, were harsh and brutal, as future events would show. We also see one of our few female characters, played by French actress Irina Dimick, and then girlfriend and mistress of Daryl Zanuck. Who said connections don't pay off? Spearheading the invasion fleet that night were the American 82nd Airborne and 101st Green Eagles and the British 6th Airborne Division, dropping behind enemy lines, who were to capture key bridges and locations and to link up with the troops from the invasion. Just like the Dirty Dozen were supposed to do if you go by that film's history plotline. Only 6% of the paratroopers hit their targets, and these following scenes certainly captured that chaos. Parachuting rubber dummies called Rupert, loaded with firecrackers behind German lines, were also used to confuse the defenders. They were not, though, as detailed as they were portrayed here. One scene that stands out among many was a particular part of the 82nd Paratroop landing at St. Mary de l'Église, and indeed, this scene in particular stood out for one youngster in New Zealand who recalled the following.
When I was at school, my parents took me to see The Longest Day. During the film, a paratrooper dies by plummeting down a well, and the audience laughed. My father, a man of military bearing who'd seen many men die, was incensed. He rose to his feet. "Not funny!" he bellowed. Well, that shut them up.
As well, this iconic scene of paratrooper Private John Steele, played by Red Button, hanging on the church, in fact, is debated, where there's not much evidence of this actually happening. But don't tell the village that today, who still pay tribute to this incident every year due to this infamous scene from the film. But once again, movies are real, history is fake. Today, a full-size mannequin of Steele hangs from the same church steeple to commemorate him. To further add to the confusion on the field was the use of the metal clickers as shown here.
For God's sake, Podgy, stop that damn noise.
With sometimes tragic results. That scene still gets to me. At 5:30 a.m., the Armada was off the coast. What followed was a major air assault and naval bombardment of the beaches, surprising the Germans, as Major Werner Pluskat exemplified here. Apparently, according to several German veterans, though, he was not even at the command bunker as depicted in this movie, but in a bordello in Caen. One note to mention is the prominent scars on the face of actor Hans Christian Blech, playing the major, were in fact real ones which he received on the Eastern Front while serving in the German army during World War II. Did he know Sergeant Steiner by any chance? Another actor surprised by this onslaught is Gert Frobe. But no, he would be spared, for he had a date in 1964 as Bond villain Ulrich Goldfinger. Although jubilant, a huge amount of French citizens were killed by friendly fire around the time of the invasion. Approximately 6:30 a.m., the Americans made their rendezvous at the beaches. 7:30 a.m. would be the approximate time for the British and Canadians. The Americans, though, got the worst of it. On the 3 British and Canadian beaches, opposition varied. Capture these landings, Zanuck had gotten full approval to film 22 ships from the US 6th Fleet while they were sailing off the coast of Corsica. The Americans ran into difficulties here with strong seas, rough defenses, and a newly arrived German fighting division. It had taken the whole day with grievous losses to gain a beachhead at 1.6 kilometers deep. According to this film, though, the American invasion scene starts off with Omaha, when in fact it was Utah where the first U.S. troops first landed. But remember, films are real, history is fake. The landing craft depicted here were certainly more spacious than the ones in 1944. The long track of the troop landing scene is amazing in scope, even with the silhouette of the cameraman in shadow in the scene. The long track shot of the troop landing scene is amazing in scope, even with the silhouette of the cameraman shadow in the scene. In charge of the bloody assault on Omaha Beach is Brigadier General Coda, with Robert Mitchum chomping on his cold cigar, leading the way, pushing his troops forward. It is also noted that in several of these beach invasion scenes, troops can be seen wearing the 1960s era military issue eyeglass frames with thick plastic frames that they were only issued after the war. During World War II, troops were only issued with the wire-framed glasses.
Only 2 kinds of people are gonna stay on this beach. Those that are already dead and those that are gonna die. Now get off your butts!
Norman Coda gives a speech Patton would have loved to have made, but it was in fact credited to have been quoted by Colonel George Taylor on Omaha Beach. But hey, I want to believe it was Coda based on Mitchum's great delivery. Despite what it says here, the fact is the first U.S. troops to land were on this beach at 6:30 a.m., but is depicted to be the second beach to be attacked. Now, seeing Juno and Gold are described together through this great shot, we know it's Gold Beach due to the fact that 2 Luftwaffe aircraft strafed the zone that morning. On top of that great long strapping shot, it reveals just how much effort went into the recreation of the invasion. Using two Messerschmitts from the Spanish Air Force, the Soul Strife, which in fact did happen, were flown by Focke-Wulf 490s. At this time of the war, the Luftwaffe had just over 300 operational aircraft left in France to face the Allied invasion of over 9,000 planes. On gold itself, while one British unit was hammering away at a strong point for 8 hours, another was off the beach in 40 minutes. On Sword Beach, the fighting for the British was also bloody and brief. Here we are exposed to the future star Sean Connery in a humorous role, which he would later display again in the 1975 film The Man Who Would Be King. On the Juno Beach scenes, the Canadians in this film are not depicted, but briefly mentioned. Point du Hoc, situated between Utah and Omaha, was assigned to the 200 men of the 2nd Ranger Battalion, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel James Rudder. Their task was to scale the cliffs with grappling hooks, ropes, and ladders to destroy the coastal gun battery located at the top. Here we see pop singer Paul Anka as a U.S. Ranger, and despite not having a major Canadian star depicted in this film, you could say you have this native from Ottawa who at least wrote and performed the movie's theme song. Useless information made useful. My grandfather would say to me and others that my father was a classmate of Paul Anka in Ottawa, and in fact it was his brother. And if you look, you'll see a young George Segal posed for starting. Joseph Lowe, seen here playing the character of Sparrow, scaling Point du Hoc, would recreate what he did on June 6, 1944, as a 22-year-old private. We also get another big historical error in this scene.
There ain't no mountains. They never even been installed.
You mean we come up all this way for nothing?
That was a deliberate choice by the filmmakers to show the futility of war. However, the real Rangers who landed eventually found the missing artillery pieces a few hours later and disabled the 5 large 155mm German artillery guns, 1.6 kilometers inland, accomplishing their mission. Here is another one of my favorite scenes of this film, of the French Free Commando assault in Westerham, where we get one unbelievable complex shot by a helicopter that lasts for about almost a minute and a half to 2 minutes. See what I mean? Throughout all of this, though, many pointed out that the Germans seen defending the coast appeared to be seasoned soldiers, but in fact, a majority at the Normandy beaches were young boys, old men from reserve units, and many foreigners in German uniform. Check out the excellent 2011 South Korean war movie, The Way Back, that showcases this fact. The film wraps with the troops successfully hooking up with paratroopers and the commandos, and the breaching of the German lines on Omaha, capturing once again the scale of battle on this particular beachhead. The movie ends on a high note with Mitchum, Coda, lighting a cigar that he probably kept from the Cape Fear film, accompanied by the rousing end theme song. In fact, this thing was used as the regimental march of the former Canadian Airborne Regiment. So, is The Longest Day a good candidate for a movie being real and history being fake? Hell no. Other than what I nitpicked, there's little to critique about the accuracy of this movie, which follows the true life events faithfully and avoids distorting the facts for a cash grab. Is it a film based on true events that was exploited successfully? Big time. This made Fox a lot of money while not sacrificing quality. The best of both worlds. That's it for my premiere episode, and I thank you for joining me. Be sure to stay tuned for my next review of a certain cult classic set during the U.S. Civil War, seen through the eyes of an Italian. I'd like to close the show to give tribute to those who made the ultimate sacrifice 80 years ago on the beaches of Normandy, and to the few survivors of that invasion we still presently have today, lest we forget. Alright, thanks for taking the time to watch this episode. If you want to see further episodes, Kindly support my channel by pressing like, you know where to find that, and subscribe to my channel, and I will be seeing you soon.